The point is that it's so materially insane to think that 1 in 5 American women will be raped in their life.
It is. I agree.
No, meaning that they're lying about being raped, that they're lying about being sexually assaulted.
You believe that people lie about being sexually assaulted? See,
all
this
the
is actually,
time.
this feeds into what I was...
Abortion is never medically necessary.
Okay.
And Joe Biden is a bumbling, dementia-filled, Alzheimer's, corrupt tyrant who should honestly be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America.
By the way, this is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals.
Expensive.
It should be public. It should be quick. It should be televised. By the way, you could fund the government
kids to watch it.
You could have like brought to you by Coca-Cola. What age should you start to see public executions?
16.
I think you could do it earlier. I think you maybe at age 12,
Whenever-
like 6th grade or so.
We note in our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk's self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true.
Prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. We need to have a Nuremberg-style trial for every gender-affirming clinic doctor. We need it immediately.
Again, there is no separation of church and state. It's a fabrication. It's a fiction. It's not in the Constitution. It's made up by secular humanists. Of course, we should have church and state mixed together.
So why do we have DEI in the first place?
I mean, DEI was obviously about trying to destroy the excellence of the country and elevate racial tribal politics.
Charlie Kirk is one of the most influential conservative voices today. But what happens when you watch him for hours on end and then fact check what he says? I've spent the last week and a half watching Charlie Kirk videos and collecting clips of all the controversial things he has said, including some lesser known clips. We are about to jump into those clips without commentary, but stick around until the end where I will talk context and fact checking what Charlie Kirk said from an independent perspective.
This liberal's logic is so far out, Charlie couldn't help but destroy it.
Your statement about the fact that 1 in 5,000 women is not even remotely close to true. Like,
okay, so what number would you say? What would you say the number is?
To say 1 in 5.
So 1 in 5 means that about 40 million women have been raped in this country. Is that your position?
Yes.
I just find it's like so far out of reality that 40 million women have been.
I know that it's a little bit of a hard concept to grasp for people like you, but like, you know, I fear that you just don't know enough women who are in positions like that. I don't really want to debate this topic to you, but
I
have
will
a good
die
day.
on the hill that 40 million American women have not been raped. I'm sorry, that's insane. It's just not true. You want to know why men are going to the right? They're told that 1 in 5 women have encounters that result in. We as men know that's a bunch of rubbish and a bunch of BS. The point is that it's so materially insane to think that 1 in 5 American women will be raped in their life.
It is. I agree.
No, meaning that they're lying about being raped, that they're lying about being sexually assaulted.
You believe that people lie about being sexually... See,
all
this is
the
actually...
time.
This feeds into what I was
all
saying.
The time.
This is...
Antidepressants, why so many liberal women are just neurotic and just so unattractive to young men. Because their number one thing is fulfilling job and career, then having the money to do things you want, having emotional stability. This hyper narcissistic. Liberal women inherently are incredibly narcissistic. So that just, it like hurts my heart because doing what I love has been kind of taken away from me to please other people. Yeah, that's the point, Simone Biles. You're representing your nation, you're selfish sociopath. You kidding me? We are raising a generation of weak people like Simone Biles.
Hi, Charlie. I'm Addie, and I'm 14. I'm a freshman in high school, and I was wondering, as someone who has like a different opinion on college, what would you say the pros and cons are? Because I'm interested in political journalism.
Let me also speak to some of the young ladies here in high school where your top, who's here where your top priority is get married and have kids? Raise your hand. Okay. Interestingly, I think there is an argument to bring back the MRS degree. And no, seriously. And just be clear, that's why you're going to college, right? Don't lie to yourself, I'm studying sociology. No, you're not. We know why you're here. And that's okay, actually.
When you grow up as someone, especially in the third world, you have a very different understanding of the Palestinian struggle.
So he's not even eating with his hands correctly. People say, well, he's just being himself. He's so authentic. Okay, if a third worlder comes and starts defecating on the side of the street in Times Square, are we going to say, boy, he's being his true and authentic self? 500 million people in India defecate on the side of the street. That's bad. We don't do that in the West because we try to value cleanliness, order, and yes, actually things that aren't filled with filth. He's either authentically gross or he's being a fake, disgusting person.
Talking about abortion, J.D. Vance recently mentioned, if a 13-year-old girl gets raped by her uncle, that abortion should be allowed. Do you think that the right wing should kind of moderate their views on no abortion ever to accommodate
The only exception
these one-offs?
would be life of the mother, which is a debated thing that even exists at all.
We have committed that 50% of the class of the classes will be women or people of color. Today, only 19% of our pilots at United Airlines are women or people of color.
They openly state that they will ensure the next pilot class is half female minority. So here's just a few questions that United Airlines should have to answer. Are there enough candidates to fill the 50% quota? Why are 81% of the pilots white currently? Is it because they happen to be the best pilots? Is it possible white men tend to be more attracted to the flying profession? If white men land planes safely, what is the problem? Seriously, what problem are you trying to solve here? Why are you trying to force a hiring class when there is no noticeable problem, except you don't like the melanin content in the skin of the people in the cockpit? I mean, I'm looking at Politico.com. I'm looking at the New York Times. I'm looking at all these places, and there's a little bit of mention here. For example, Politico says top Republicans reject any link between GOP rhetoric and Paul Pelosi assault. Of course you should reject any link. Why is the Republican Party, why is the conservative movement to blame for gay schizophrenic nudists that are hemp jewelry makers breaking into somebody's home, or maybe not breaking into somebody's home? Why are we to blame for that exactly? And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like $30,000 or $40,000. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions. I wonder what his bail is. They're going after him with attempted murder, political assassination, all this sort of stuff. I'm not qualifying it. I think it's awful. It's not right. You really have to wonder, in fact, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise today as a clear recipient of affirmative action, and particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color, but I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
I hear because of action affirmative. She can't even say that. We know. It's very obvious to us that you were not smart enough to be able to get in on your own. I couldn't make it on my own, so I needed to take opportunities from someone more deserving. This is how arrogant Joy Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee are. They're so narcissistic, they think this is persuasive. They think we're like, oh, of course, that's why we need affirmative action, because you have impressed us with your brilliance. Of course. Oh no, imagine the world without Joy Reid. Imagine the world without Sheila Jackson Lee or Michelle Obama or Ketanji Brown Jackson. They think this is persuasive. They think as they kind of now reveal that I'm only here because of anti-white, anti-Asian forced discrimination policies that turned me into a bitter, resentful activist that hates white people, honestly, through our policies.
George Soros's Open Society Foundation funds this magazine, as does the Ford Foundation and many other wealthy titans of the American progressive movement. The writer accuses Charlie of saying, and I quote, black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously. But if you go and watch the clip, the very clip she links to, you realize he never said anything like that. He never uttered those words. He made an argument against affirmative action as a policy. He criticized a specific Supreme Court justice as an individual. He never said anything about black women as a group. He made an argument for judging people of all races and backgrounds by their own individual merits. The very evidence she provides, this hack of a writer, shows that she lied about a dead man, and yet she wrote it. An esteemed magazine published it. It made it through the editors, and of course, liberal billionaires rewarded that attack.
She takes off the Miss Rachel costume and the uniform, etc., and she comes back and she's like, now I'm just talking as Rachel. And she goes, the reason I'm this way is because I'm Christian, and in the Bible it says love your neighbor. And really, I approach people in love, and if you're not doing that, I guess you're not really following the Bible. She didn't say that part, you're not following the Bible, but that was kind of the underlying piece there. So Charlie,
128.
What's going on with that?
Well, let's let her say it. 120. I'll respond, and then I got a dash.
I've shared prayers on here before and said, God bless. And that's because my faith is really important to me. And it's also one reason why I love every neighbor. In Matthew 22, a religious teacher asked Jesus, what's the most important commandment? And Jesus says to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. There's no greater commandments than these. I believe it's mentioned 8 times, love your neighbor. So yes, everyone belongs, everyone's welcome, everyone is treated with empathy and respect. It doesn't say love every neighbor except. There are so many reasons I stand strong in love. I stand with everyone. That's who I am. And the love back and the God bless if you disagree is genuine.
Andrew?
I was just, to Jack's point, I'm dying to know, like, what do you think when Miss Rachel quotes scripture in that way?
I mean, Satan's quoted scripture plenty.
It doesn't just say love your neighbor, though. It does say love your neighbor except, in a sense.
As yourself, but hold on. She's not totally wrong when she says,
yourself.
first of all, the first part is Deuteronomy 6:3-5. The second part is Leviticus 19. So you love God. So you must love his law. How do you love somebody?
Here we go, folks.
You love them by telling them the truth, not by confirming or affirming their sin. And it says, by the way, Miss Rachel, you might want to crack open that Bible of yours. In a lesser referenced part of the same part of Scripture is in Leviticus 18, is that thou shalt lay with another man shall be stoned to death. Just saying. So, Miss Rachel, you quote Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself. The chapter before affirms God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters.
I don't think there is a justifiable biblical verse section in context where you could justify the death penalty.
I mean, you do know it's the only verse repeated, the only law repeated in all 5 books of the Torah. You know the 5 books of the Torah?
Yeah, yeah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and then Deuteronomy.
Yeah, there you go. The only law that's repeated in all 5 books is that you shall give the death penalty to take a life. So why do you know better than God?
Okay, that's great.
That's not man. Yeah. God said, if a life is taken, you shall take the life. So why is your opinion above God's own teaching to his people?
Hey, Mr. Kirk, thanks for coming out tonight. I got a question for you real quick. Up until about 5 years ago when gay marriage was legalized nationwide, the conservative movement has been explicitly pro-traditional family. Now, both you and your organization advocate for the acceptance of anti-Christian, immoral lifestyles like homosexuality and transsexuality, going as far to invite drag queens like Lady MAGA to your events. It seems to me and anyone who's paying attention that conservatives just believe whatever liberals believed 5 years ago. Right now, there's a push by the left to normalize pedophilia by way of child drag queen shows and... Oh, excuse me. Phone shut off.
Go back to your notes. That's probably where you saved it. You know, you got to like push double tap and then go over.
Right now, there is a push by the left to normalize pedophilia by way of child drag queen shows and rebranding pedophiles as minor attracted persons. 5 years from now, will you be promoting child drag queen shows? Will child abuse become part of the conservative platform?
Boy, that's a slippery slope fallacy if I've ever seen one. First of all, I've never invited a drag queen to come to any Turning Point USA event. I was at Politicon, and an individual by the name of Lady MAGA came up, and I said, I took a picture, and she walked away. Secondly, let me ask you a question. Are you a Trump supporter?
Yes, sir.
So are you a proud Trump supporter?
Of course.
So are you sickened that he had a gay man speak at his convention?
Yes.
Then you're not a Trump supporter, my friend. Thank you very much. Let me ask you another question. Should he return the money of Peter Thiel, an openly gay man who supports his campaign?
No, if it helps him strategically,
Okay.
sure, he can.
Should he stop talking to Tammy Bruce, who's an open lesbian that's a Fox News contributor?
If it's affecting his ideas, then probably, yeah.
Okay, so you say you're a Trump supporter, yet you have all these issues and these disagreements with him. Let me be very clear about my position. My personal position. I'm a Christian first and foremost, then an American, then a constitutionalist, then a conservative, in that order. I believe marriage, biblically, if we want to have a biblical and theological discussion, as articulated in the greatest book ever to exist in the history of the world, the Holy Bible. Marriage in the Holy Bible is one man, one woman. I also do not believe in the sort of rhetoric that some people engage in, that all of a sudden that they say there's no place for gay people in the conservative movement. I do not believe that.
That's not conservative.
And let me ask you a question. Can I ask you a question then?
Sure, go for it.
So, the American family, liberty, freedom, the Constitution, our history, veterans, that's what we're conserving. I'll get to you later, though, don't worry. So let me ask you a question. If you had your way, what would you do with gay people in America?
What would I do with them?
Yeah, because they're not allowed in the conservative movement, so would you just kick them out anytime they show up at a Republican Party? If you were in charge, like what would you say? You can't be part of the Republican Party.
If somebody is advocating for being openly homosexual, yeah, they should not be part of the conservative movement.
So I just want to go through the list. Guy Benson, no place in the conservative movement. Dave Rubin, no place in the conservative movement. Peter Thiel, no place in the conservative movement. So that just to go down the list.
If they are supporting open homosexuality.
So I'm going to ask a very respectful question, as respectfully as I can. What does what they do in their private life concern you so much that you have to go up in front of a crowd? And
it is against God. That is
so. Let me ask
Are you a
question.
Christian or not?
Do we live in a theocracy? Yes or no? No. Do we live in a theocracy?
You said you're a Christian.
I am a Christian. And do you know what? And guess what? I will say this. Part of being a Christian is appropriately interpreting what the theological says for the individual, but also means to be long-suffering and patient and loving and kind. Jesus Christ talked to all people. Jesus Christ went and did his ministry through Judea and Samaria, and he had dinner with tax collectors, and he had dinner with prostitutes, and he did his ministry in every part of the Mediterranean. What it means to be a Christian, my friend, is to be open-minded but firm in your beliefs, so you can have that belief. But if you say there's something inherently wrong with communicating or associating just because they make different personal decisions than you, sir, are not a conservative. Thanks for being here tonight.
You're trying to attack me, which is ridiculous, like asking me what my salary is. Sure, I'll reveal it willingly.
You brought it up in context. I'm asking, why don't you live like a socialist?
Okay.
Go live like a socialist.
The point is larger. The point is larger than that, Charlie.
I live like a capitalist every single day, Cenk. I live as a capitalist,
hey,
I live what I believe.
No.
What do I do? I get charity every single year.
Hold on.
What's my salary?
Charlie,
less than his.
Charlie, take a seat.
Come on, Cenk, let's go.
Charlie, what are you doing? Take a seat. Take a seat. Psycho? All right, no. Take a seat. You're gonna take a seat. You're gonna take a seat over here. Oh my God.
What's my salary?
All right. Oh, ridiculous. All right, behave, everyone. Jesus Christ. Okay.
I practice what I preach, Cenk.
Charlie.
You do not practice what you preach.
Charlie. All right, hold on. Last point. You don't.
LeBron James is a self-interested, narcissistic, and we know he's not very smart. He does these press conferences where he thinks he's making sense spiritually and freedom of speech. But he's a product of his time. What would you expect from LeBron James? It's cool to insult America. It's cool to sell yourself out to China. Not very bright, not wise, not somebody of good character, but as a blowhard. He'll never have to apologize. He'll never have to admit failure. And of course, everyone knows that LeBron James chronically cheats on his wife, obviously. He's an NBA player. Savannah James should be asked about that. Hey, how do you feel about your husband, like, cheating on you all the time? But that's just how the NBA works. The whole thing is an open marriage. He's immoral in almost everything he does. He shouldn't be lifted up, but I don't think most Americans do. He would obviously stand for the China national anthem, and he can't even show a modicum of respect for the country that has given him everything.
Thomas Sowell and Justice Clarence Thomas are far better black role models to celebrate than Martin Luther King. Period. End of story.
Holy day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And we said some things today, and we challenged some of the primary doctrine that is running modernity. If you disagree with our take on MLK, just listen to this episode. Give it a fair hearing. Just say, hey, you know, maybe I don't agree with Charlie. Maybe I think he's the best person to live in the 20th century and that he's worthy of worship, which is effectively what this society demands. Then fine, just listen to the episode and maybe you'll learn something. We talk about the positives. And then we also get into some of the other implications of this. We're a truth-seeking show. But I can say declaratively, this guy is not worthy of a national holiday.
The response was disappointing because some people, instead of dealing with the substance and or my very public track record of hating bigotry and racism and also associating with people of all sorts of different backgrounds, they started to call me racist. And I'm not saying it's because of this, but black America was getting richer, they were getting stronger, and families were largely still put together before the Great Society, Voting Rights Act, and Civil Rights Act. 60 years later, black America is in a worse position. I'm not saying it's because of the Civil Rights Act. I'm not saying it's because of the Voting Rights Act, but somewhere something went awry. You know, kind of going off your speech, I could have done the old conservative thing. I could have hid in the corner, said, you know what, I'm so sorry, how dare I? Because I saw the chatter increasing. I saw the right-wing intelligentsia saying, no, 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 Charlie, it's a career ender. You don't do this. You just say MLK was awesome, and you don't ask questions, and you just kind of walk away. I said, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. I think that kind of attitude is destructive and wrong, and we felt the pressure that day. We were getting text messages of people saying, Charlie, this is going to end your career. Charlie, you'll never be back in decent circles. And I said, you know what, honestly, I don't subscribe to that. I'm going to trust the Lord. I know what we're saying is true. I was disappointed because I said, listen, guys, you could hate what I'm doing. You could criticize it. But if you're just going to throw the R word around like a Frisbee because I dare to question somebody who I consider to be a false idol of the modern cult of anti-racism, of course, is there's only one person in the 20th century that gets a federal holiday, and it's Martin Luther King. I can name at least a dozen people more deserving in the 20th century of a federal holiday than MLK. There are much better figures, such as Billy Graham in the 1960s, who had a lot more to do with the passage of the Civil Rights Act, who gets no credit than Martin Luther King. People forget Billy Graham had White House Oval Office meetings. Billy Graham led the Crusades for a moral awakening. What I'm trying to counter is the reason we talk about race so much is because we have a federal holiday to a guy that talked about race all the time. We celebrate the Civil Rights Act more than the American founding. The multi-decade incubator of DEI was housed in the Department of Justice post the Civil Rights Act. The attitude, the enforcement, the precision that the DEI bureaucrats operate with was all workshopped in the Department of Justice in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And just now are we seeing it in corporate America, and we've seen this cancer metastasize. What started as a good intention to try to eradicate the injustices of saying that, you know, only whites can eat at the restaurant has tragically metamorphosized into a beast that has even more hatred than some of the elements of the antebellum South.
You're comparing abortion to the Holocaust.
Absolutely I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse.
Were these blacks trying to go rob her? Happening all the time in urban America. Prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. Black crime is a major issue.
Okay, everybody, a lot of people are going to be saying Happy Juneteenth. It should not be a federal holiday, and I'm on my way to work. Have a good day.
We got to get Joe Biden out of the way so we can run up against Cammie. Oh my goodness, is she beatable? It's like Black Hillary on steroids. Is she black? I guess she says she's Caribbean or whatever. It doesn't matter. She gives these speeches and it just has this aura of totalitarianism. My team says she's Indian and Caribbean. I'll tell you what, she would be a lot easier to beat than Joe Biden. A lot. I mean, Joe Biden is a bumbling, dementia-filled Alzheimer's corrupt tyrant who should
honestly be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America.
By the way, this is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals.
Expensive.
It should be public. It should be quick. It should be televised. By the way, you could fund
Force
the
kids
government
to watch it.
You could have like brought to you by Coca-Cola. What age should you start to see public executions?
16.
I think you could do it earlier. I think you maybe at age 12,
Whenever-
6th grade or so.
Yeah, and the Civil Rights Act, though, let's be clear, created a beast, and that beast has now turned into an anti-white weapon. But if you have unapologetic, ferocious anti-white racism, then young whites are going to find some very radical political positions.
Right.
And I don't want that, actually.
Right.
But that's where a lot of the young white men that we speak to on campus, I sometimes have to kind of bring them back into
Yeah.
like free society, like let's calm down, because they say everyone's against us. We need to create our own identity politic group.
Right.
And I actually don't think that's a good idea. I don't think more tribalism is the answer to tribalism. But I see why they believe that. We note in our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk's self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true.
I have a question.
Okay, what's your question?
Why did you say that the civil rights bill should be overturned?
I didn't say that. I said it was a mistake.
Why? That's crazy.
Now you gotta figure it out.
I wouldn't be here.
So I'm sorry, are you trying to say that blacks thrive under subjugation?
No, I'm not. I'm saying I'm asking you the question. The data shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad. It was evil. But what happened? Something changed.
Something that is common in New York City is that young thugs will come up and actually, as you rent the bike, push the bike back in, kind of as a way to troll you, as a way to be like, oh, you paid for it? Well, you lose all your money type thing. Now, were they trying to hijack her? Were these blacks trying to go rob her? Happening all the time in urban America. Prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. It's happening more and more. Do you know that more than 600... Is that stat real, Blake? Come on. Is it real? I don't know if that stat is real. We're going to double. Okay, I'm going to say it. More than 600 white women a year are murdered by black men. 600 white women a year. Did you know that? They are conditioned to believe white bad, black good. White bad, black good.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight 781 with nonstop service from Houston, Texas to Washington Reagan National Airport. I want to tell you that we have Sheila Jackson-Lee on board, and in the spirit of affirmative action, we have Ramon and Cadillac are your two pilots. They've never flown before, but they are black.
If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? It almost creates thought patterns that are not necessarily wholesome. It creates resentment. And I'm not allowed to say that this guy's not an American. I'm sorry, he's not an American. At what point is it time to start to at least use rubber bullets? One of the reasons I'm pro-Israel is that when Israel gets invaded on their border, they defend their border. If 300 Palestinian Arabs tried to run in Israel like that, it wouldn't end well for them. We're the only superpower on the planet where we just allow people to run them over. And we're supposed to, just so you understand, those military-aged males are now going to get cell phones, food, cash, flights to the interior of the United States. Why do we have a military? Why do we have men with guns if we can't use them? Israel's defending itself, but why can't America defend itself the same way Israel defends itself? And understand, this is not about shooting people every day. If you do it once, maybe twice, when there is an actual invasion, people learn, and the threat of force is what keeps this sort of thing from happening. Those are the men that will go into your communities and break into your homes and rape your women, take your children. But hey, they're dreamers. We're not doing background checks on them. We're not doing DNA checks on them. They just come right into the United States however they please. Remember the whole whip fiasco? My position all along is, yes, it wasn't true, but of course you should be able to use whips against foreigners that are coming into your country. Why is that controversial? What would happen if Texas started firing rubber bullets? Let's play this out. Let's just say rubber bullets. What would happen? And by the way, I don't rejoice in this. I don't want to have to use force, but these people are criminals. They're invading. The left cannot comprehend that their policies fail because they're bad. They cannot comprehend that they lose elections because people can't stand them. Instead, just like the Soviets 100 years ago, they assume that they are wreckers. Their policies fail because they are evil people, lurking in America who just sabotage them for no reason. This is why the left literally needs endless, constantly increasing migration from the third world. Because among people born in America, the share who are alienated by how much the left obviously hates them is constantly growing. The Great Replacement strategy, which is well underway every single day on our southern border, is a strategy to replace white rural America with something different.
So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. You can significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home, by having more armed guards in front of schools. We should have an honest and clear reductionist view of gun violence, but we should not have a utopian one. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
The spiritual battle is coming to the West, and the enemies are wokeism or Marxism combining with Islamism to go after what we call the American way of life. And the American way of life is very simple. I want to be able to get married, buy a home, have kids, allow them to ride their bike till the sun goes down, send them to a good school, have a low-crime neighborhood, not to have my kid be taught the lesbian, gay, transgender garbage in their school, while also not having them have to hear the Muslim call to prayer 5 times a day. That's important. We want the American way of life, which is, by the way, Christendom.
The one issue I think that is so against our senses, so against the natural law, and dare I say, a throbbing middle finger to God, is the transgender thing happening in America right now. We are in a church, and so it's important to remember Deuteronomy 22:5, a woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God. You hear that, William Thomas? You're an abomination to God.
Her daughter all of a sudden came home and said, I'm a boy. She said, what? And the whole assembly line, the conveyor belt, was started to grind. They wanted to give her cross-sex hormones. They wanted to give her testosterone therapy. They wanted to cut off her breasts. They wanted to do all these sorts of things. And these doctors do this without any thought whatsoever. Yeah, sure. Here's the script. Here's the clinic. Go here. Go for surgery. These doctors need to be put in prison quickly. We need to have a Nuremberg-style trial for every gender-affirming clinic doctor. We need it immediately.
We must react politically. We must ban trans-affirming care the entire country. Donald Trump needs to run on this issue.
Abortion is never medically necessary.
Okay. So if you had a daughter and she was 10 and she got raped, and she was going to give birth and she would, and she was going to give birth and she was going to live, would you want her to go through that and carry her baby?
That's awfully graphic.
But it's a real life scenario that happens to many people.
The answer is yes, the baby would be delivered. That's how we get the greatest horrors of the 20th century. Those people are unwanted.
So you're comparing abortion to the Holocaust?
Absolutely I am. In fact, it's worse.
Really not. I don't
It's
think it
45 million babies. It's nearly 8 times worse than the Holocaust. What's the moral difference between a small baby in the womb and a grown Jew who was killed at Auschwitz? What's the moral difference?
I think that monogamous heterosexual marriage should be a prerequisite to adoption.
Again, there is no separation of church and state. It's a fabrication. It's a fiction. It's not in the Constitution. It's made up by secular humanists. Of course, we should have church and state mixed together.
Last year, you said something about DEI, unqualified black pilots. You see a pilot on a black pilot. Don't you think it was an irresponsible statement suggesting that maybe these pilots aren't qualified or unqualified?
No. But I'll tell you exactly what I said and why I said it.
Okay, go ahead.
I said, the pretext, I went through a whole windup. I said, United Airlines is saying that they want 40% of all their pilots to be people of color or women. We have learned that we have relaxed standards anytime that we try to reach racial quotas. Anytime we reach racial quotas, we relax the standards. Standards for air traffic control, professors, or college admissions. Therefore, when it comes to pilots or surgeons, if I see somebody who is black, as I said on the show, I'm going to hope that person is qualified. That's what I said, which of course is legitimate, because they're begging the question, we're not hiring based on merit anymore. We're hiring based on race.
Now,
So when you see a black pilot, you wonder, boy, is that person there because they earned it or because they were placed there? That's what DEI does. It makes you ask questions you otherwise would not ask.
So the airline industry is going to take an unqualified person just based off diversity.
Underqualified, not
correction, yeah.
Underqualified.
Unqualified, underqualified, whatever, uncertified, and put them in a cockpit and risk people's lives?
Those are two different things. Under and un are two different things. Of course, United Airlines will not take someone off the side of the street and put them into a pilot. But in order to reach a 40% goal, they might cut corners. They might accelerate the process in order to reach a goal. We know this through all sorts of DEI examinations and projects over the last 10 years. You have to choose in life. Either excellence or racial quotas will end up being the most important. And both cannot simultaneously exist. It's never happened before.
Okay, so when we talk about DEI, well, who benefits the most? Because black people really don't. It's only like maybe 3 to 4% of black people actually benefit from those programs. So who benefits the most?
I'm not sure your question. I mean, theoretically, if 40% of all pilots end up being black people or people of color.
But that's not. I actually looked it up. It's only like maybe about 6% of pilots
their
are black.
goal is 40%, right? That's the point. It's like that's actually a great point. So they wanted to go from 6% to 40%. And so you have to wonder, boy, you go from 6% to 40%, there's going to be a relaxing of standards.
Okay, I guess the way let me see if I can rephrase this. So essentially when you talk about DEI, affirmative action, or anything to that effect.
I'm against all of it, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and that would be fine. The thing is that now it's actually, referenced as a slur against, essentially if you see a black person in a position or, minority or whatever, the assumption is that person is not qualified when literally, and, you have to be qualified in order to even to get in that.
I'll give you another example. What percentage of TV commercials have black people versus white people?
I'm not sure about that, but white people are also in commercials.
About 40. Well, this is important. About 40 to 50% of all network TV commercials have a person of color right now. What percentage of America is a person of color?
At least for black people, I know we're about 13%.
Yeah, it's about 13% of the population, nearly half of all the TV commercials.
White people are still in the commercials.
Yes, but underrepresented as proportional, though. The point being, I can give you another example. Easier to get corporate jobs. There are entire departments that are dedicated to just try and expand racial quotas.
You know what really would have fixed this from the beginning had you not had, all the... So why do we have DEI in the first place? Because this is the problem that creates. So why was DEI necessary in the first place? Or at least the government thought it was necessary in the first place.
Why do I think that it was...
No, why would the government...
Do you want my well-intentioned explanation or the...
Whatever you got.
I mean, DEI was obviously about trying to destroy the excellence of the country and elevate racial tribal politics.
I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Are you going to do that?
Yeah, I mean that is correct, yeah.
That's correct? Okay, so can we both agree?
What was the context of what I said, though?
What was the context? I don't even want to get into DEI because your opinion on DEI, it doesn't really help it in this case, so... If the context between what you brought up was that you believe that
because they were being hired because they were black.
Okay, so can we both agree that every single pilot, whether black, white, whoever, has to go through FAA certification?
No, actually,
we can't.
New lawsuit shows that black pilots and female pilots have the standards being relaxed.
No,
for them.
Sir, can we agree at the time of February 29th or 2023 when you said it at the time? No.
No.
So I'm a feminist. My question is about the role of women, though. What should women's role in public and private life look like, and what are the material benefits of that?
Well, thank you for that. Can I take it? I don't even want to take this detour, but can we both agree on what a woman is?
Yes. An adult human female, it's a biological state of being that is also socially experienced. Can I please elucidate just one example of that social experience?
Yeah, I was going to answer your question, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So let's say you're a member of a tribe, and that in that tribe, you have the biological female anatomy, and in order to become a woman in that tribe, you have to also get a tattoo. That's a social experience that's mapped onto biological reality.
So can a woman have a prostate?
Can a woman have a prostate? Biologically speaking, a woman is an adult human female that has a biological reality, but it's also social experience, right? So I don't...
Yeah, it's super easy. Like, can a woman have a prostate?
So as per my definition of woman, I would say that people who have a prostate are biologically male, but they can sometimes be socially treated as women.
Okay, got it. So women can have prostates. Got it. Okay, so you're a feminist that actually isn't just fighting for women. You're also fighting for men.
So, yes, men also experience harms from patriarchy, but I argue...
We're talking about the same feminism, though, just make sure. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, men also experience harm from patriarchal domination, but I would argue that those harms come from that system of domination itself. In the same way, for example, this isn't a threat, but if I reached across and punched you in the face, then my hand might hurt. Right? So, are we understanding that there are, patterns of power? So, I would also fight for the rights of men as a feminist, just as I would fight for the rights of women.
Sure. You think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
I think I would have a few responses to that. I think that women report more stress and dissatisfaction today because, not because they have more rights or because of feminism, but because they're under dual pressure to both excel professionally and also because of the domestic labor in homes that is structured around outdated expectations. So, for example, studies like the OECD's Better Life Index show that women's life expectancy, education levels, professional achievements have risen in countries with higher gender inequality. So I would argue that what you're calling unhappiness is actually visibility, because now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
Yeah. That's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny.
We've always
no, hold on a second. Why are suicide rates going up more for women?
I think that encourages...
Forget complaining. Materially, women are killing themselves more. Why is that?
I think that even if both men and women have become unhappier, men's suicide rates have risen as well, and that's also been exponential. Can you at least concede that feminism offers only one potential explanation? There could be also other explanations.
Of course, obviously, but feminism is the glaring thing in front of us, where we have fertility rates down, we have marriage rates down, we have unhappiness up, and we did something in the 1960s out of the universities of Brady Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these feminists that basically said, you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control, and all of a sudden women are way unhappier than they were 40 years ago. And I just have to ask the question, why is that? Is it working? And maybe there are biological differences between men and women that we should respect, and that deep down a lot of women want to get married and have children. In fact, we should applaud it, and we should support it, and we should say it means nothing if you're going to go be a CEO of some shoe company or be some banker in London. What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down long after you're gone.
I think I would bring 2 points to that. The first one is just really simple, which is that you can ascribe liberalism all you want as the cause of the unhappiness. I would argue something else. I would say that it's certain economic policy that has very little to do with the social acceptance of alternative lifestyles. I would say that we can recognize that income inequality across a vast swathe of Western countries has increased, which causes all kinds of social ills, a lack of social cohesion, housing price growth doesn't correspond with wage growth, monopolies increasingly become kind of emboldened to interfere with politics, and monopolies don't prioritize social health either. I think that those offer more compelling reasons for a decline in happiness than an increase in freedoms, because just one more thing, on an intuitive basis, generally speaking, people want more freedom, not less.
That the women of the West that are married and have children, especially a lot of children, are far happier than even the ones that earn more money correlated at the same age.
So I also don't think that happiness is a very good metric, and neither do you, because you think gay people shouldn't just pursue happiness by being gay. They have other moralistic considerations to be making. So I don't think smiles per capita is a particularly convincing way to measure whether or not we should encourage women to be autonomous. I think we should maximize agency within a fair system that has reasonable parameters, because it's expedient, it's good for the economy, it's logical, it's the moral thing, because if we can't prove the material harms, we shouldn't discourage it. And also, self-reported studies is a really flawed way to do psychology. It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk. If I took one of those surveys right now, I'd check extremely miserable. But so would a Palestinian child who's been torn to smithereens. How are we going to measure...
You would say extremely miserable?
No, I'm kind of making a joke.
No, I mean, but seriously, but hold on. I mean, that's an important point, though, is that the women in the West have it the best in the world, and yet they're way unhappier than women of sub-Saharan Africa. There's something fundamentally wrong here. Because the women of sub-Saharan Africa have something that a lot of women in the West do not have. The women in the West have cats, and they have good jobs, and the women of sub-Saharan Africa, they have a belief in the divine, and they have kids. And maybe there's a biological undercurrent that is keeping a lot of women from realizing their full potential. And so without reading your phone and just connecting.
I'm not really reading my phone.
Well, it's fine. Sure, then you can answer without it. Fair enough. Would you agree that it's a good thing that more women get married and have children in the West?
I would ask you, would you say that a sub-Saharan African woman who's experienced female genital mutilation and checks extremely happy in a survey, and I also would check extremely happy in a survey, who do you think would be objectively more happy, even if they both check the same answer?
No, again, so I fully, if you want to talk about how Islam mistreats women, we could talk all day long. Like, I'm all for that.
Me too.
Okay, good. So we agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
We actually
We
have
agree on
agreement.
many things.
Then we should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
I think that all religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into
Well,
the
okay,
UK either.
hold on. So hold on a second. Hold on. That's funny. Hold on. Can you show me what would your example, because I have 50, of a single Christian country that you would say mistreats women, right?
America.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We had a female woman vice president. We had a female vice president, a female speaker of the House. Women earn more than men in America.
In Rwanda, female representation in government supersedes the UK by quite a lot. Did women get treated better in Rwanda?
Okay, I might be super off this. Like, is Rwanda Islamic? Like, I'm not totally sure. I don't think it is. Like, is it? Like, I don't know, actually. It's not. So, again, we were just talking about Islam. It's a little bit of a side note, but you must be morally clear, because you brought up female genital mutilation, which is a teaching of the Islamic faith. But as a side note, like, again, this is very important, which is, I'm not here to require you to do anything or not. I'm making a simple observation, which is objectively true regardless. The women of the West are miserable, and they're miserable for a reason, because we've told them to suppress how they are made by God and pursue something else and get a bunch of trinkets and get a bunch of promotions, and they end up at 38 years old with a big flat in London, and they're miserable. And we should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
Yeah, okay, I think I'd bring two just final points to this. First one is just really intuitive, right? Which is that if you actually care about women's happiness, then the solution is to structurally support them. That means universal childcare, shared legally enforceable parental leave, and in Nordic countries where women have high workforce participation and also some state support, they report higher life satisfaction than in more conservative countries, including America. So if your metric is happiness,
just use satisfaction
equality
surveys. You just told me they're
matters.
BS.
So are satisfaction surveys bullshit or not? Because you told me they're bullshit.
Do you acknowledge satisfaction surveys or not? You just told me that they're BS. Do you think they're we can use that as data?
I don't think that
yes or no?
It is the only sole data set, but it is a data set that necessarily
You told me they're so
matters.
flawed and you self-report. Okay, by the macro self-satisfaction data, I am correct. And you are right. When you have paid family leave, you are happier. I'm actually a proponent of that. At Turning Point USA, we pay for 6 months when somebody has a child. I think there's a lot of agreement we can have on that. We need to encourage having more children. I think the Hungarian child policy is phenomenal. We should look at that, because the greatest thing that is plaguing the West is we're not having enough kids. And it's not just bad because we won't have a future. It's also bad because the present is awfully miserable for too many women as well.
Okay, in which case I think we get...
Do I start bringing this to a close, please?
Okay, I think just one final thing, which is that in which case we get to a really interesting argument about what parts of womanhood can be demarcated to the social and what kinds of womanhood can be demarcated to biological. So, for example, my anatomy is demarcated to the biological, but the fact that I might potentially be a better nurturer than a man, I would demarcate that to the social, you might demarcate that to the biological, in which case we have differing moral scales of value. I would ask why we should necessarily prioritize your moral scale of value, which prioritizes things like the birth rate, when in actual fact there are various other moral scales of value. And if you yourself are a free market American, why is it the case that you would not, like the previous speaker noted,
I've already answered.
Extend personal freedoms towards all spheres, including a private sphere?
I believe in absolute truth claims, and it's absolutely wrong and bad when a society stops having kids to replace their own population. And then you have to import the third world, and you become the third world. It's bad.
I disagree, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't even know what we're debating at this point, other than I believe that Israel, I believe the facts, Israel was unconditionally attacked on October 7th. They're responding in kind. And I would just ask you a very simple moral question. How should Israel have responded?
Not with the blanket carpet bombing of the city, not with bombing hospitals. Of course, some kind of military operation might have been necessary, but not murder on this scale. There is no justification for what is happening with the enormous death toll that is being produced. I really cannot see how you come here and you have the gall to lecture us on Christian morality and then sit here and justify the murder of thousands of civilians. And is it working, Mr. Kirk? Is Hamas dismantled?
I've never said that.
You just did.
Well, no.
This is your whole
in
thing.
war, these are called casualties of a war.
We're going to need to stop bringing this
Again,
to close.
I'm not going to justify every military maneuver of a 100,000 person army. Instead, what I will do is I'll be clear that there is a good guy and there is a bad guy. I honestly...
Isn't that the morality of a child?
Well, hold on. It's interesting you say that, because a child who knows that Israel is the good guy, Hamas is bad, has a lot more wisdom than a student like yourself at Cambridge University.
I will be glad that I will not have been somebody who has defended the genocide of the Palestinian people. And I think you will have to reckon one day that you have reckoned with.
Interesting. I want to close on this. So can you tell me what African country is currently ongoing a civil war?
Believe it or not, I know about Sudan because I'm not an idiot.
How about what Southeast Asian country has an ethnic cleansing going on right now?
Myanmar.
Good. And you have strong opinions on both sides?
Unlike you, I take an effort to be informed about foreign policy and to come to conclusions. You are a culture warrior. I believe when everything is done, Mr. Kirk, people will see you and the people you supported as corrupt, as selling the country out to the lowest bidder, and of doing irreparable damage to a country I'm sure we all deep down love.
The difference,
I think you will have to reckon with that
difference
one, Mr. Kirk.
Is when... The difference is when we get our way, we'll still have a country, and your country will be a third world hellhole.
That was a lot. It's overwhelming, and honestly, it's been very hard for me not to make a video just from emotion. I've had a lot of strong emotions about the reactions from both sides of the aisle, and I plan to talk on that more in the future. But instead of rushing to judgment, I've spent the past week and a half digging into the facts, studying Charlie Kirk's views, his debate style, and checking whether evidence supports his claims. And I want to share with you what I have found so far. Politically, I am an independent, and I am trying my best to be objective as I watch what's been unraveling in our country. Also, just note that I have been following Charlie Kirk for months, watching his debates, and was already putting together a response. But after what happened to Charlie, I held off on it. Everything became a lot heavier and more serious considering the brutal way that he died. It was quite a shock for everyone, and I've been contemplating how to respond with understanding. Just for a moment, I want you to imagine the world that Charlie Kirk believed we should have. One where the death penalty was televised. You saw how the world reacted to Charlie Kirk's violent death. You've seen the celebration, the hateful memes, the jokes. Can you imagine what social media would look like in a world where the death penalty was a televised spectacle? Today you saw a short clip of Charlie's discussion on this topic, but I tracked down the full original episode to get the full conversation around the topic. We will watch and examine that in an upcoming video. I've also been working tirelessly to finish my research for a video discussing what Charlie Kirk claimed about black pilots. I started looking into it because of my own curiosity and quickly realized this information was too valuable not to share. Even though my channel is not particularly a political one, Charlie claims that he is not being racist, that is not who he is, and that DEI is responsible for him doubting the qualifications of black people, and says that the left has caused this. Is there factual information that actually backs up his fears that a black pilot might be underqualified because of DEI hiring? Or is he simply lying, simply ill-informed, or making claims based off mere suspicion and speculation rather than any evidence? This is important because if you listen to Charlie Kirk as a debater, he said that it is always up to the person making the claim to provide the proof. I've watched all his campus debates about black pilots that I could find, as well as TV interviews where he talks on this more extensively, comments from his Thoughtcrime show and Charlie Kirk show, as well as written articles from the Turning Point website, as I tried to grasp his argument, his context, his evidence, and to give him a fair shake. Charlie's slogan when he went to debate people was, "Prove me wrong." So let's take him up on that challenge. Even now, let's see if the evidence proves him right or proves him wrong. He said we should never stop talking, and I agree. Since he is no longer here to respond, I want to be gracious, cautious, and yet honest, because ideas are powerful, and his ideas are spreading now more than ever while he was alive. Was what Charlie Kirk said true? Was he right? Was he misguided? Because if his claims aren't true, repeating them still shapes how people think, and that has real-world consequences. If you want to see that full breakdown of Charlie's claims on black pilots with all the facts and data I could find, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and drop your questions down in the comments so I can include them in that video. I'll leave you with a short preview of one of the interviews we will be evaluating and deconstructing alongside all the facts and data that I could find.
You got yourself in some trouble online because you're always stirring up trouble online.
Oh,
reacting
I'm such
to
a troublemaker.
You are a troublemaker. Reacting to a June 2021 clip, but it was making the rounds on X, of the CEO of United Airlines, Scott Kirby, talking about their quotas over at United for diversity in the ranks of pilots, which is extremely controversial for obvious reasons. Here's the clip that you were reacting to in South 13.
How is diversity and diversity targets working into the Aviate Academy?
We have committed that 50% of the class of the classes will be women or people of color. Today, only 19% of our pilots at United Airlines are women or people of color. And by the way, from all the data I've seen, that's the highest of any airline in the country.
White males don't just dominate in the cockpits, also in the C-suite at United Airlines.
Well, look, at United, I'm proud of the diversity that we actually have in our C-suite. I think if you look around corporate America.
Correct me if I'm saying, though, so this was just based off your website, the people you list as executives, but out of 11 people, 3 are women. I believe 1 is a person of color.
That's correct. But, in corporate America, I think,
That's a low bar. How do you raise your own bar?
Well, a lot of this is, focusing on it. We have programs one of the things we do is for every job when we do an interview, we require women and people of color to be involved in the interview process.
Shut up. Oh, I'm sick of this nonsense.
It's so repulsive.
All right, so wait, let me finish it by your reaction to it. And people freaked out because you said the thing that you're not supposed to say, but that's what you're known for. Here he is in SOT 14 on Charlie's show.
And that's why I think this United story and the DEI story hits so hard, because we've all been in the back of a plane when the turbulence hits or when you're flying through a storm and you're like, I'm so glad I saw the guy with the right stuff and the square jaw get into the cockpit before we took off. And I feel better now thinking about that.
No, I mean, you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.
The meltdown after this with people like, oh, and the proper response was from you, from people like Matt Walsh. This is the world you people have created.
If this has been valuable for you, please consider becoming a patron, and don't forget to subscribe and like and share this with somebody who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching.